Red-eyed crocodile skinks are definitely one of my favorites. And as some of you may know, we're starting to revamp and rebuild their enclosure. Now, this one was supposed to be for them, but I think it's just going to be too much room for the two of them. And I don't want them getting lost, not to mention the file snakes up here just kind of hanging out. So, yeah. I'm James, guys, and you're watching Blue Dog Reptiles. It's always tricky going through what you have to figure out what kind of enclosure, because there's so many different ideas on how to make an enclosure, especially with what you got if you have a limited budget. Everything that we are putting in this enclosure that we're building for the red-eyed crocodile skinks is stuff that we've had sitting around. So as you can see, we have a bin back there of just wood that's come from different enclosures, or we have rock. This rock actually came out of the red-eyed crocodile enclosure. I don't think all of it's going to go back because I designed it differently, but it will become a paludarium essentially. Now, obviously, it's different for me because I have the store, and so I have access to all this wood if I want to put it in one of the enclosures. You guys don't have that option. I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you have just as much as I do here. And if that's the case, good for you. But it's tricky because even with all this, it's hard to pick the exact pieces that you want. And obviously, I don't want to use any of this stuff that's priced out because then you guys can't buy it. And I don't want that. I want you guys to find the perfect piece for your exhibits or for your enclosures. So, like I said, I used everything that I put in this tank so far has been already in an enclosure at one point or another. Now, without further ado, let's get into what I actually have going on in here. So, as you guys can see, it's coming along really nicely. Now, I've used pieces of lumber before. Actually, I can show you. I know it's kind of hard to see in these enclosures, but there's actually a border line that goes along the front, and it's actually I used just lumber in there. Now, why lumber? Because, well, it was stuff that I had laying around, but I wanted to make sure that it's sealed. So either if you're going to put lumber in, you need to dry lock it, or you need to completely foam it in place all the way around it so that it doesn't rot, especially if you're going to have water in it. Now, this enclosure is all about repurposing stuff and, well, redesigning their enclosure because they needed, everybody else has got an update, but these guys just haven't. So I'm going to walk you through what we did, and this is part one. Stick around for part two because this is only the beginning. But guys, all right, so what I used here was, I actually used a half round piece. Now, I'm doing this for a couple of different reasons. A, it automatically gives the crocodile skinks a hide. Now, on that end over there, obviously it's plugged so that they don't drown because there is going to be water up here. But we're gonna have our drainage layer in there and our screen, and then we'll have the soil. So we'll give them plenty of places to burrow and hide down, as well as giving the baby places to hide. Now, when I go through and I start designing out an enclosure, I use hot glue. Now, if you don't know this, hot glue does not hold underwater. It does not. I found that out the hard way with my big paludarium up front, and I was kind of upset about it. That's on me. I didn't know, but now I do. But what I use hot glue for is I will go through and I will tack these pieces in place just to see if I like the overall layout. And then I will go through and I will foam around them. Now, you may go, well, James, how did you did you lay the enclosure on its back, to put the pieces, or to put the foam on the sides? Actually, I didn't. I'm gonna teach you guys a little trick here. Now, this is black crate. This was originally for a saltwater tank, as you can see. It still has the calcium on it. But they make this in big white sheets. Well, I say white, but they also make it in black too. I'm actually going to show you. So I actually picked this stuff up from Menards. There's actually the SKU if you guys want to pick some of this up. This stuff is really, really handy, and it helps you to either build cages like this so that you can house your pumps in to protect your pumps, or if you want to do backgrounds, all you have to do is, well, make sure it's not dirty like this, and then just stick it against the wall, use hot glue to hold it in place, and then within a couple of minutes you have it dry and ready to go, and then you can just start foaming over it. Now, I originally just go through and do a first coat, and that's just filling in all the gaps back and forth, so you can kind of see the contour going back and forth on it. And then what I do after, once this is dried, is I'll kind of peel off the top layer, and then I will re-hit it again, because what I want to do is actually want to build a bridge right back in here, something for them to get up a little bit higher. But before I do that, I'm actually going to finish down here, because I have found that if you build something up higher, it makes it more of a struggle to get your hand down in there. Now, these are all pieces of used cork. This one actually has an opening right here, so the baby will actually have a place to go down and hide. But we do have to be careful because there is an opening underwater. But I don't want the baby to get stuck, so I still may end up plugging the end of this just so that they can't get in it. I haven't decided yet. All the pieces of wood in here are all Malaysian. They were originally from this enclosure, but like I said, this enclosure just needed an update. It needed a makeover. You can see I put a piece of Malaysian here. This is all going to be underwater. Now, I wish I had done this a little bit differently, because I don't like seeing foam right up against the glass, but because of how this piece of cork was sitting, I needed to make sure that it and the big piece of Malaysian were secure so that they didn't move. Probably what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up carving this all the way back so that there's just a little bit right here sitting up against the glass. And then, you know, obviously this is going to be a black water tank as well. And so you won't be, eventually it'll die and you won't be able to see it. We currently have the misting heads up in here. I want to make sure that the foam isn't in the way of the misting heads. Obviously I can redirectionalize them if I need to. And they're going to be pointed back here because this is where all of the substrate is going to be, and the live plants. This right here is actually currently all of the drainage layer, the plants, and the soil that was in that enclosure to begin with. That soil is just loaded with springtails, which I'm absolutely happy about. We actually take some other soil that's dried because it was getting a little wet, and it was getting a little stagnant. So that's why we wanted to dry it up just a bit. But that's it for part one, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around for part two. I can't wait to show you where this enclosure is going to go, because we actually do have to add in filtration to make sure that this water stays clean for the red-eyed crocodile skinks. The next video will be next week for part two, so stay tuned and can't wait to see you guys. Oh, and a big thank you. I know we didn't do this on our last video, but thank you to all the veterans on Veterans Day, which was Monday. Thank you for your service, and to all the families, thank you for your support along the way. We couldn't do what we do without you guys, and yeah. Tell us what you think down in the comments of how this enclosure is coming along. Would you change anything differently?